Imagine me. Back in 5th grade, I was this short, and I mean really short little kid. I was sporting a wiry frame of glasses. As you can imagine, no one was short on insults when it came to me. From little man to 4 eyes to big head, I mean the insults were almost endless. But as time went on, you learn how to, as my parents would say, tough it out and take it. And they became less and less of a threat as time went on. Those really weren't the things that bothered me. Oh, but one day, I found what could really get under my skin. Again, I was in 5th grade, and one of my black friends came up to me and he said, "Hey, you act like a little white boy." I remember that to this day. You see, it was the last straw on this othering that I kept experiencing in school. If I was found doing homework instead of horse playing, I was acting white. If I gave up sports to play an instrument, I was trying to act white. If I wore Sperry's, these aren't Sperry's, y'all, but you get the point. Instead of Air Forces, I was trying to act white. And for a long time, I wondered, what was it really about me that made me any less black? And so I did my best to distance myself from those friends that said that for a while because of the resentment and those things. And so while I was getting flack from my black friends from acting white, I also was appalled at the perception that my non-black friends had of my black friends. I was in a predominantly black school, black middle school and high school, but I was in a magnet program that consisted mostly of white and Asian folks. And I had this friend, right? His name was Alan. He was Asian too. And he came up to me out of the blue one day, unexpected, unsolicited. And he said to me, "You know, you don't act like your black friends. You're not ghetto. You're smart." I had to double back and I thought to myself, what exactly could he have meant by that? Because the kids that he was speaking disparagingly of, I mean, these were the same ones who would go on to become lawyers and doctors and black educators and go on to start businesses and become some of the smartest people I knew, go to HBCUs named after emancipators and educators. Why were they being misnomer as anything less than educated? But then I remembered that in both communities, both black and white, there was this perception that being white was synonymous with being educated and learned. And being black, well, it was equated with anything but that. And so now I began to understand the fear that many of my friends, my black little boys and girls, had of me acting white. Because the more that I distanced myself from them and the classes I took and the friends I kept and the sports I played, it was possible that one day I could look down on them just like my friend Alan did, despite our shared history of oppression and hardship. And so now I had a decision to make, y'all. Will I go off and do all these great things and go to these PWIs and be educated, but allow my resentment of the friends that had told me I acted white to cause me to leave back my black culture, my black family, my black friends? Or would I go into that setting fully taking on my black culture, my black legacy, the heritage of my ancestors who had fought for me to have an education to build up my community? In other words, would I allow being surrounded by whiteness to shroud out my blackness? And it will all be put to the test when I arrived on this hill called Cornell. And so I get to Cornell University, right? And I realized something. I realized something very important, right? I'm black. Now I know y'all looking at me and you're like, no dip, Sherlock. Yeah, you're black. But when I say I'm black, I mean at Cornell, in every place I went, it was obvious I was black. You need an example? Okay, case in point. I could be in a classroom where the professor is talking about racism, or he's talking about microaggressions, or God forbid, he is talking about slavery. I could see my classmates and my peers with their gawking eyes looking at me like, hey, he's talking to you. You gonna answer that? And expecting me to raise my hand and share these stories of all the trauma I've been through in my school, my life, my work, experiences. And remember, y'all, I have a dilemma. Will I do what I feel I'm obligated to as a black person and educate everyone in this space, put them in check, be proud and black? Or will I, as one professor told me, assimilate? I'm sure every single one of you in this room has had to face that dilemma of deciding whether you're going to go into a room and be your authentic self, or whether you'll be what makes people in the room most comfortable. And so I quickly got over that, because I remember I was in the HR class where one of my white classmates said that he didn't think non-violent offenders of color deserve to have work after returning home from prison. And I said to myself, okay, I see I'm going to have to get real black in here today. And honestly, it became so easy to speak up. And partly what gave me such joy is, number one, it proved I'm not acting white. See, y'all? I'm standing up for us in places where it matters. And number two, there was this release of serotonin every time that I was able to educate a racist, put a person in their place, check the professor even. I was becoming a Black Panther, y'all. But then this thought came to me, and I realized something, y'all. With every oncoming year, there was a new batch of kids to educate. Problematic kids at that. And I wasn't seeing any type of change. And with me not seeing change, I was tired. I was tired of having to educate more than I was being educated. Tired of having to pull out these stories of trauma of being the only child of a single black mom, just trying to make it just to make me relevant in this space. I was absolutely tired of being someone else's teacher. I soon realized that I needed a space to be authentically black, authentically myself. And so that's how I led to founding Black Voices on the Hill. And so I remember recording the first episode of my podcast, and it was about a month after the death of George Floyd at the hands of Derek Chauvin. Well, actually, because of his knee. And I remember the imagery of Derek Chauvin's knee being in George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, and it was ingrained in my memory. And I was so angry. I wanted to put everyone in check. I wanted to put the criminal justice system in check. I wanted to put police and cops in check. I wanted to check every problematic kid that surrounded me who didn't understand that black people were dying. I really just wanted to rip everybody a new one. And then the thought came to me, Daniel, you spend a lot of time tearing down the outside. But what have you built for your community in its place? Yeah, you educate racists and you educate people who don't understand the black experience in America, but when will you acknowledge the black excellence that is still surrounding you despite the oppression? I was soon reminded by one of the elders of my community to never let my sense of obligation to single-handedly eradicate oppression in this country outlive my duty, my true duty and responsibility to build something for my people in this place. And so now you can listen to weekly episodes of my podcast where we welcome Black TikTokers. We welcome activists as well, but we even welcome Black faces from the halls of Congress. And I remember since I've started the podcast, I get comments like this almost daily where people are saying, man, I love what you're doing with this show, man, you're doing your thing. I love what you're doing for the community. I love your perspective. And this isn't just coming from people that look like me, y'all. I mean, this is coming from people of every creed, every color, every nationality, race, background, faith even. And because it's coming from so many different people, they can listen to my podcast. And when you hear an episode about police brutality and people talking about the threat of Black lives and Black livelihood, they're able to learn. Those that know the threat of having a police bullet targeted on your back can feel seen and heard for the first time. While those who have never had to fear the blue and red blaring lights in their rearview mirror can now check their own privilege and learn how to become allies to the struggle and fight against state violence. In other words, my greatest contribution has not been in educating racists or people who didn't care about Black people or anybody's life for that matter. No, my greatest contribution has been in creating spaces where we can have bold and courageous and authentic conversations about humanity and people who live in their skin daily, and through them sharing their perspectives, people are able to check their biases and their flawed perceptions, and they're able to finally recognize the humanity of other people. And when I realized that my greatest power was not in educating, but in boldly and authentically sharing my story, I have been restored, and my people are becoming free as a result. And so I want to leave these thoughts with those who are in this room right now, and you feel like you're the other or the only one in the room, or you feel misunderstood. I want you first and foremost to remember this: you are enough. Never allow society's expectations of who they think you should be to box you in or limit you based on the color of your skin or the gender you identify with. So what if you don't fit society's expectations of who you should be? Suppose you don't fit their box. Break the box, in fact. Because when you break the box or society's expectations, you have not only the power to free yourself, but you have the power to liberate other people as well. Hey, I'm doing it. I'm my Black, bold, and courageous self every single day. And I'm freeing other people that are around me as well. And so number two, I don't just want you to know that you are enough, but I want you to know that your story, it's enough. Who were the greatest teachers that you ever had in school? Was it the teacher who taught you the dictatorial lessons of mathematics and rules, and the teacher who maybe the history teacher who taught you about these distant figures that you had no relationship or application to your daily life? Or was it the teacher who took you on a journey? She took you on the eyes and through the eyes and lens and perspective of the people that you were learning about. Yeah, it was that teacher. Because sharing perspectives has the power to turn that which is abstract and make it real for change in our daily lives. When I realized that I had that power in sharing my narrative and allowing others and freeing them to do the same on my platform, that's when people who never would have listened to me finally took note and listened. Finally, I want to speak to black people and say, not only are you enough or is your story enough, but I want you to know today that your blackness, it is enough. Because no one of any race, any color, any ethnicity has a monopoly on intelligence, on education, on being learned, and certainly not on swagger. You see, we come from the likes of W.E.B. Du Bois. We come from the mind of Toni Morrison. We come from the heart of Audre Lorde. We come from the stern rod of Harriet. And I don't know about you, but I was born in the era in which I had a black president and first lady who had 2 degrees. And because I know that, I can, when someone comes up to me and says, "Boy, you act white," I boldly remember the words of my pastor, and they're ingrained in my memory to this day. And he said to me what he said to all of us that day in his preacher voice. He said, "Some may have the power to describe you, but no one will have the power to ever actually define you." And so I want you to know today that your power doesn't just lie in knowing who people say you are or who others think you are. Oh, but your power lies in knowing who you actually are. Y'all, this has been my TED Talk on why you should never tell a black kid they act white. My name is Daniel James II. Thank you so much for this time.